You are now live on YouTube.
Thank you, Ashley. Okay, everyone, I guess we'll get started. My name is Sasha Bertinsky. I'm an urban planner with Planning and Urban Design. This is the Downtown Design Review Committee. It is a committee of the Downtown Commission. This committee is made up of 5 folks. Presently, we have an empty seat, so we've got 4 folks here, and they'll be introduced in a second. This committee, just for general information, looks at projects before they come to the Downtown Commission for official design review. Projects, all projects in the CBD level 2 and level 3 projects go to the Downtown Commission for design review as stipulated by our Unified Development Ordinance. This committee is an informal meeting. This is not a mandatory review. Applicants do not have to come to this meeting if they don't want to, but we have volunteer designers willing to give them comments and feedback before they go to the Downtown Commission. And generally, we find that projects improve before they get to the Downtown Commission, and applicants appreciate the feedback. We generally have not been taking votes in this committee, and really you'll see it's an informal meeting. And so with that, I will let Stephen Lee Johnson, who's a member of the Downtown Commission, take roll, which will also be as a way of introduction as well.
Thank you, Sasha. This is Stephen Lee Johnson. I'm present today online. If you'll confirm you're here when I call your name, I think that might be the best way of doing this. Pam Winkler.
Here.
Brian Moffitt.
Here.
And Robin Rains.
Here.
Okay, that's the 4 of us, Sasha.
Thank you. And so for today, we actually only have one item on our agenda. We don't expect this meeting to go past 12 o'clock. The item we have is the Cox Ashland project, which is a conditional zoning project. This project has already been before City Council and been approved. They have some changes that I think they need to make. They'll explain why, but I believe it has to do with grading and topography. And they may be going all the way back through to City Council for those amendments. So after this committee, this project will then go to the Downtown Commission, and I think it'll be going to July, but we'll let them tell us. So with that, I will turn it over to Brian Cook and Chris Day, who are here, and there's some other folks on the call representing the team, but they'll talk us through the project before we have a discussion.
All right, thank you, Sasha. I'm going to share my screen. All right, so again, just a refresher, we're looking at a site in the South Slope area, fronts along Cox Avenue, Ashland Avenue, and then also Federal Alley. And from what you saw before, we've had to make some slight changes to some of the buildings on the north end of the site after doing some studies of site conditions and grading and retaining walls. Costs are becoming slightly prohibitive. So we've done a few modifications to the proposed buildings on the north side. And so looking in plan, the building along Ashland Avenue, originally we had a 7-story mixed-use building with two levels of commercial and 5 levels of residential above, and then a 4-story office building on the north side. We have a parking deck, and then originally we had some small apartments flanking the parking deck along Federal Alley. So based on this, the soil and site conditions that we've kind of gotten into, what we're proposing now is eliminating the apartment buildings that we had on Federal Alley, pushing the parking deck down the hill so it's up tight against Federal Alley, And then we have eliminated the office building, and we're going to make that all residential. So a quick view of elevation. This is the Ashland Avenue view. The building at the south end stays as originally proposed. This is the north building that we're discussing on Ashland. This portion right here, for the most part, stays exactly the same, except we have eliminated one level of commercial at the street level. So originally we had 2 levels of commercial and 5 levels of residential above. We've eliminated one level of office commercial. So now it's commercial at street level and then 5 levels of apartments above. And then this portion over here, which was an office building, that is now all 5 stories of residential.
So Brian, just to add to that, with these changes, and we had to shift out of the hill further and pull the parking deck back towards Federal Alley, while we've reduced commercial space, there's been no loss in residential units or affordable units, correct?
Yeah, so I just looked back in that we're still moving some units around. We are at or a few units less than what we originally had.
But it's primarily been commercial that's been pulled out.
Correct. Yeah, so for the most part, the units that we had on Federal Alley that we eliminated, we brought them back up to this area over here on Ashland Avenue.
Okay.
And the main reason for the potential for the units decreasing is that we had a lot of small studios, and we're now looking at slightly larger units, more 1-bedroom units that are just a little more livable than what we had before. So that's where the reduction in units is right now. But we're still kind of working through that to try to get those numbers as close to what we had originally proposed. All right, I'm going to switch over to an animation so everybody can get a better kind of visual of the overall concept. So this is, sorry, let me switch. Okay. So this is a view on Ashland Avenue, looking north up towards downtown. The building at the south end stays the same as we originally proposed. The overall look of this portion of this building is the same, except we've just reduced it one story. So now this is overall a 6-story building. Commercial office on the ground floor and residential above. Main lobby entrance to the building at the center. And then the portions to the left of that now, this is all what we're proposing now. It's new or different from what you saw before. So we are continuing the language of what we had proposed before on this end, breaking up the masses as we go along the street. The main material selections are the same that we had before. We have a dark colored brick that's at the base and then goes up at an end tower. And then the main body of the building is a fiber cement siding. And we've been looking at some different widths and profiles of that material.
Brian, is the color we're seeing sorry, is the color we're seeing white? Is that kind of a chosen?
It's not. We would be looking at a light color. It probably wouldn't be stark white, but it would be right now we're looking at a light color like that. And then switching to again, still fiber cement siding, but with a darker color. The entrance to the parking garage was relocated, and this has already been through TRC, but originally when you saw it, it was off on the side, on the north side of the site. We did change this after some requests from traffic because this curb cut lines up with Morgan Street directly across the street, so it creates a safer and better of the road.
So all the buildings still have commercial on the ground level?
It only has commercial on the other end. So at the south end of this building, there's commercial on the ground level. At this end, where I'm going to walk along this right now, these are all units at the street level. And so what we're proposing is small little patio spaces. Sorry, go ahead.
Just the problem we've always had on the ground floor with residentials, we're trying to activate. That's part of our BDO and is activation. And on the first floor, they're going to have their blinds closed all the time. There's not going to be any activation if you have residential on the ground level.
Yeah, that's true. But I think that anytime you're trying to create a mixed urban space that has a combination of commercial and residential, I think it's there's different ways to activate it, and besides having just a clear storefront window that's a shop front, you're right. People will have blinds closed, but I think that you'll get variations of blinds open and closed. People sitting outside, different types of activities happening at the outside. So I think there's going to be some activation just in different ways.
Hey, this is Matt Sprouse. One thing I wanted to add to that is on the north side of this building where the residential does come down to ground level, we still have a really wide right-of-way right there. And so even though there are residential units at ground level, they're stepped back from the street a good, I'd say 30 feet, maybe 40 feet from the city sidewalk. So it's an unusual situation already where, with office or commercial, they would be stepped back. With the residential, we have a little bit of buffer space now so that it's not kind of like a street townhome or brownstone unit pushed all the way up to the city sidewalk.
Yeah, so this right here would actually be the city sidewalk out here. So really this becomes sort of more like an intermediate plaza level that's off of the main city sidewalk. As the sidewalk continues to go down, this becomes more of a plaza. This is, the property line is actually at the building. So, this is in the right of way. So this is public space. And then so on this level back here, this is at the south portion of the building. We do then have full commercial level on that ground floor.
So Brian, if you could go back just where those two folks were walking out of the building, is that an entrance where you step down into the building?
It is, yes. Yeah, so that'll be, that would be the main lobby entrance to the building off the street. So I'm gonna, do we wanna stop here and listen to some comments on this building, or should I continue down to Federal Alley?
I think it would be good to go ahead and show the changes there on Federal Alley as well.
All right. So the parking deck, you recall it was farther up the hill, right up against the back of the building on Ashland. It was 8 to 9 stories, 1,000-car parking deck. We have now reduced this down to about 6 levels, and down to about 550 spaces now. So we brought the height down on those things.
Was that where there was some green space originally, or was that on another rooftop?
On this level?
I just thought I remembered on some rooftop there was some green space for the apartment dwellers.
There was a rooftop patio that was on the north building.
Is that still there?
It's not.
And Brian, that was really just it was an outdoor patio space. We weren't proposing a green roof.
Correct. That's correct. So for the now that the garage is pushed up tight to Federal Alley, we've been trying to play with some ideas to activate it and make it look less like a garage parking deck up against the building, up against the street. So what we've done here is to start with, on the ground level, we've taken out some small areas, roughly about 18 feet deep, so about a parking space deep, where we've got these spaces that can be activated. And the thought here is that maybe these are area for markets, pop-up shops, pop-up retail shops. But the idea that it's not, maybe not necessarily something, a business that's permanent, but can be changed out and used for, maybe it's local artists that are looking for a space for a weekend or 2 weekends to sell something, but just changing out and being kind of fluid with what it could be. We are proposing these sort of fold up doors. We can provide security, during the evening or when things are closed. But these are not. We're not proposing like a garage door with metal or fencing, but it would be possibly like wood planks or some other material that's a little more decorative than just a garage door. But so they do pop up and create a canopy when they're open. For the screening of the parking levels above, one option we're proposing is a series of perforated metal panels, similar to what we've proposed on the other buildings that we presented earlier. But again, just something to give a little bit of articulation and screening of the concrete deck beyond. And then what we're also proposing potentially is intermittent between the perforated panels have fabric canvases, and the owners are interested in working up a kind of a partnership with some local muralists, painters that could do some work on these, and whether maybe it's individual, each panel is an individual artist that does something, maybe it's one artist that does an abstract image across the entire thing. That opens opportunity where these can maybe change out once a year, every couple months, but just kind of giving some kind of giving a palette for local artists to create some public art. Materials on this thing, the parking deck would obviously be a precast concrete material. These orange pieces that are popping out, those would probably also be concrete that is painted. We have the perforated metal panels and then the fabric panels, canvas panels. The stairs at each of the buildings. We have those as open stairs, and the thought there is to have some color to them, so they accent and become more of a design feature to the building, even though they're more utilitarian in use. Sidewalk width and everything stays the same as originally proposed. Before we had the apartment building pulled up with a 10-foot sidewalk. We're maintaining that width.
Brian, is there one vehicle entrance on Federal Alley, or was there another one at an exit at the other end, or?
There is. So there's one entrance exit at Federal Alley, and then one entrance exit at Ashland.
Okay. And those pop-up spaces, just to be clear, I think this is obvious. They're closed off at the back, so they don't actually go through to the parking deck.
That's correct.
Okay.
One other design scenario that we're looking at that we wanted to get your all's feedback on, in addition to this one, as we're still trying to look at some costs on some of these things, but as another way to screen the deck, let me pull up one more image here. We're also looking at more of a somewhat simplified version of what I just showed you as well, and just have all the same features, except instead of the perforated metal panel, you'd have more of the parking deck exposed, the concrete exposed. But these pieces that are exposed would have more of an architectural relief to it, articulation. So I just wanted to get your all's feedback on this compared to the other one. You know, how you all feel between the two, and so I'll just open up to comments on this all now.
I like the perforated screen option better. I don't know what's on the other side of Federal Alley. But if ever there is any kind of occupied space, I know lights from parking decks can be very problematic for anybody in the vicinity, living in the vicinity at night. And at least the screening would maybe reduce some of those issues at night lighting.
So directly across from the parking deck, these are all the backs right now. The backs of buildings that are on Cox Avenue. So Swannanoa Cleaners is right here. The chemist and Funkatorium are down the street. So right now, those are all back of house
right
delivery areas.
But we could definitely see changes in the future.
Sure, absolutely.
My concern with the Federal Alley, I prefer the screens too. However, I think it may be cost prohibitive, so it may not necessarily be which one we prefer. And I also am concerned. I think that the pop-ups and the canvas panels being changed out are great ideas. I just wonder if that would actually happen or if it would be an empty space. So that's more of a concern. I mean, I think they're great ideas and it would be fantastic, but I don't know that the reality of the situation would be the way we see it on this image.
Yeah. So Robin, just a comment on that. How would you all feel if, again, you know, we're trying to activate the street. I mean, it is an alley that's on. It's a secondary street. If it was just a parking garage, if there's additional parking spaces in that location where we have these pop-ups, but we brought the panels and screening down to the street level, how would you all feel about that?
I like what you're trying to do programmatically, honestly, Brian. I mean, I when the food truck court was less than a block away from this, it worked great for a few months until things happened. But and that had less to do with the food trucks and people populating the food trucks than with some management with that space. But I just don't know what's going to go in there. I think that's what Robin's saying is that, you know, food trucks that can pull up and do something quickly and easily, even a temporary market. I don't know that we have that many of those going in those locations, but I would prefer that you do something retailish or even temporary like you've got shown than just having people walking beside a parking deck. I like the direction you're going. I also prefer the screens and the canvases, but I would echo, I'm going to give you some leeway on that based on what the economics of it allow. But the differentiation and the block side for the changes you've made on this, they make sense.
And Brian, one question too. Have y'all thought about maybe like a simple power supply inside these pop-up spaces? Or is it just a shell and no access to power?
No, yeah, it would have power. Yeah, so I mean, it would be set up like what we usually call like a cold a warm retail space. So yeah, I mean, it would have power. There wouldn't be any. We'd have to work out where toilet room, the bathrooms would be, of course. But as far as space. I mean, somebody could go in there and they'd be able to plug in and have lighting and everything.
Could you just put a piece of storefront across it and make it a retail space at some point? Is it set up for that?
Yeah, I mean, you could. I mean, it definitely would be set up frame wise where you could come back and put storefront in. I mean, these aren't deep spaces, so I think that's where we felt like, instead of doing like a glassed kind of fully defined storefront space or retail space, that it might be harder than trying to do something like this that might be a bit more flexible. And we've even kind of gone back and forth between the space between each bay. Maybe those are open between each other, so that you have more flexibility in size.
Agreed.
But yeah, and I'm saying pop-ups, and that's in markets, that's one idea. I mean, these potentially could even be a small retail space for somebody that is looking for a really small space but wants a full-time retail type space. Instead of being a frontage where you walk into the store, it's more about kind of like what you see on outside of the Grove Arcade.
Yeah, that's what I was envisioning.
Yeah. I like this. And then as Pam said, as that alley evolves in the future, those could become more storefront and commercial space when the as things develop. It kind of keeps it more simple as that use is getting established there.
How deep are they?
They're about 18 feet, so it's
okay.
Basically what was a parking space on that side, taking that, and that was even something we've not even talked about it in house was. With the idea of food trucks, could food trucks even back into these? You almost have like a little bay of food trucks. Problem is that alley is so narrow. It would probably be challenging trying to back in and out.
Remind us, is there on-street parking along those street trees?
Not in the street trees.
Okay.
Side. I guess Chris, Matt, I can't remember, is there parking on the other side? I know like delivery trucks pull up on that side, but I don't know if there's actually dedicated parking on that.
There's not any dedicated parking in it, and it faces the back end of the buildings along Cox. So there just wasn't enough room and right of way to get parking in there as well.
Yeah, and we've actually set the building, the parking deck. We did the same thing with the apartments, but we had set the face of the building back from the actual property line so that we could have a 10-foot sidewalk and widen that sidewalk there and make it feel a little more comfortable walking down that street.
You ready to go fight about the other side?
I guess I just got one more comment about this side. I think that we all, we're excited about the garage being wrapped in apartments on this side, but I do think it's worth, commending your team for, trying to go to the effort to do something with this wall. I think that the mural concept is important, and especially if it's something that has a public engagement component, which we know is difficult, but there's plenty of a couple of good examples of new parking decks where it just missed the opportunity. So at least y'all are trying to seize that opportunity on this one. And I do think it's a plus that it's smaller in scale, but I guess we've just acknowledged the challenge of those pop-up spaces down there. That's a huge challenge, but it's interesting and exciting, and I hope that's something that could pull through and really get engaged. So.
Yeah, I agree. I love having the local art aspect, and I hope that the owners would really see that through and make that a priority, because that's very important to the community.
Brian, if I could make a small design suggestion that might even help the budget, is that the screens are the perforated screens actually compete with the art panels right now. And so one thing you might do is just reduce the screens to where they are actually only between the openings of the parking deck, and allow the art screens to be the multi-story piece that really pops up that above. And then you would accomplish what Pam was trying to do, which would be to limit both visual, visual barrier between both from outside in and inside out. But then, I mean, just as an architectural element, that perforated screen kind of competes with the art screen. Maybe you reduce it a little bit in size, let it ride between the openings. I realize that the openings are kind of climbing, so that might, I don't know what that does visually. I'm just throwing that out there if that makes any sense.
That does. Yeah, we'll take a look at that.
I also appreciate the setting them on slight angles the way you've done, which kind of undulates that fairly flat surface. So if you could keep that aspect of the art screen, possibly, even if the perforated screens get reduced.
Yeah.
I want to say it reminds me a little bit of the Wall Street. When they tried to activate the ground floor there. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And it's too bad we don't have enough room to put like a climbing wall.
Well, there might be some space at the other end. Does the city want to have a partnership on that?
I also saw that in downtown Chattanooga. One of their major parking decks has a big climbing gym on it.
Yeah, I was going to mention the same one, Sasha. That High Point gym in Chattanooga. They did that. They took the old movie theater and the parking deck and made a ridiculous climbing gym.
We should probably move to the other street frontage.
Okay. If I can do this without making people sick.
Can you stop right there?
Yes.
That's pretty much okay. So I'm going to jump in if that's all right. The previous design, when this end of the building was commercial and had that kind of glass top, it felt like I was looking at least three different buildings. Whereas now, when I look at this, and I realize that you've broken up the mass and you're moving in and out, but really in this perspective, it feels like one big long building, and you see those very, very similar balconies just kind of marching down the street, and it's a bit overwhelming in the scale and the size and the length of the thing. So I'm just reacting to impressions. So it was this view, and there was another view when you were even on the street level, kind of looking down the length of the building. It felt very uniformly repetitive in a way that was much less attractive than the previous version. Now you've differentiated this corner piece with different kind of balconies. These are more recessed. The massing is different, but I don't really feel like that got repeated. That kind of differentiation got repeated as you went. It just feels very, very similar all the way down in a way that's, again, much less attractive than what we had before. I like the plaza. I don't mind the materials. I like a lot of the things you're doing, but I feel like this needs the same attention and detail and differentiation horizontally. I want more granularity and feel like it's less just one tremendously long building. And I don't know if I'm making any sense, Brian. And
No, you are.
I think it looks, I agree. It looks just very intimidating. It certainly doesn't have any kind of a homey quality at all. It looks just very intimidating, the massing to me.
I had that same thought, and I like the white pieces. I think the white pieces by themselves are great, but there's so many of them that I think that they lose some of their greatness because they're so repeated. I mean, aren't they even on the inside space too? Isn't it kind of the same language throughout?
Yeah.
I think I preferred it when this looked like a separate building, because this is one of the largest projects that we've seen downtown. So I think it would be nice if it felt.
And so if I could, so Brian, you've got different languages and different materials, like on the end corner and around on the other side, where you change the materials on the balconies, you change the window layouts. You even did it on this end, where you've got again. So if I'm wish I could like grab things and show you what I'm talking about. But so from this corner to the other dark piece, that's a building. And the white piece in the middle is separate, and that reads to me as a separate building. But then it's from there on, it's very, very similar. So maybe take one of these chunks of the white, and you introduce some of the language that you had on the other side, on the Cox Avenue side. I'm sorry if I'm like stomping all over your party on the differentiation between the buildings within the campus. But you've got lots of different languages already on the project, and so maybe reintroducing some of those material, and it's not even the layout or how you're doing the massing. I think you can do a lot of this with materials, and maybe it's one of the other things that's bumping up in my head is it looks like it's very vertical, but boy, when you're looking at it from street level, it's extremely horizontal. You've got these, the way all of the balconies line up, the way the roof line lines up, it feels like an extremely horizontal building. And I'm wanting to see some more differentiation, especially as I understand how Ashland itself has fallen away from me, but this building is just striking such a strong horizontal line. I don't know. And again, I'm kind of reacting to it, Brian, as much as I'm giving you any actionable intelligence.
No, I think that's Brian, that's some good feedback. Yeah, I mean, I think we can take a look at this closer. I mean, I think regarding taking any kind of language from the Cox Avenue side building, I think we're trying, with that building, we're trying to create a language that was more in relation to what's happening, the feel of Cox Avenue. And then Ashland Avenue sort of being a different piece, but pulling in some of the elements that kind of continue around. That's mostly like more of the white, the lighter colored siding material.
Mm-hmm. But the balcony material was a different material too, was it not?
It's not really showing up as well in this. So we do have a sort of almost a rust color perforated metal.
Okay.
So that's a language that picks up, that continues throughout the entire campus.
Okay. So maybe it's a lighting thing that I'm not. It looked like a different color on the other side, and even around the corner as you go on down Ashland, they looked completely different to me. But maybe I'm just seeing it maybe it's shadow versus something else. But boy, I mean, when you read it like that, it is just a really big building, and those two white pieces around the entrance are very, very similar, and I'd just like to see some more differentiation for those pieces.
Okay. Well, I think that's something we can take a look at and see what we can do to
Can you pan to your right just a little bit so I can see that other corner building? Okay. Yeah, see, that's got enough differentiation, but it's similar in the way they're bouncing around there a little bit. Just, am I reading that wrong? Are they the same?
Yeah. So you're right. So this portion of the building here, we do have the balconies bouncing, and then we did keep them more lined up along here.
Okay.
But that's something we can look at that as well again and see if we can reintroduce that. I think a lot of this is just for your info. So these units on this end are bigger units.
Okay. Yeah.
These are all more one bedroom, smaller units, and I think that's where the balcony. That's why the balconies are lined up there.
Well,
but I think we can still look at that.
It could be as simple, Brian, as starting to change the materials in the insets or even the color of the material in the insets so that they begin to read as breaks in the mass. And then maybe you get, so one of the things I was really enjoying about the changes you made on the parking deck is the way you were bringing, again, that undulating, those vertical panels kind of marching down. It kept it from reading like that is a horizontal line, the way that's striking along there. And I'm feeling like I want that broken up more, whereas like the building on the right, between the break and the buildings, you've got the differentiation in the mass, and it's not so long that I really read those as separate masses, whereas this feels very much like a single massive building. And I'd like it to read as less of a single massive building, if possible. So I've said that about 7 different ways. I'm going to try not to say it again. Sorry about that.
Brian, can you remind us, I think you may have mentioned phasing in this overall project. Is there a general idea of what y'all expect to take place when?
Yeah, so phase 1 will be all of this building and the parking deck.
Wow.
Phase 2 will be the building on Cox Avenue. And then phase 3 would be this building.
Okay.
Congratulations.
So does Pam or Robin, Brian, do y'all have any more comments or thoughts for the design team?
No, I expressed
I would like.
I just wanted to reiterate that I still think it's very problematic to have residential on the ground level.
I had one question about the courtyards on Ashland. I'm a little bit worried about how high are the balconies? I mean, that felt a little tight visually to me. I don't know if anybody else.
It's about 12 feet.
Okay. It's yeah.
I would love to hear the committee's feedback on the pedestrian entrances. We've got right here perfectly in the center right there, the main lobby entrance. And to me, it's so recessed and understated that how would you know where to go? I mean, if I were driving by and I was like, oh, there's the entrance. I don't know. I feel like it needs to be stronger somehow. I don't know if you all have thoughts about that.
Doesn't this building have multiple pedestrian entrances to it as well?
Yes, this will have. I mean, this is the main. This will be the main lobby into the residential portion.
Okay.
There'd be main entrances off of the commercial portion at the south end, and then there's potentially. I think we have a small lobby entrance on the north end. But Sasha, I think I see what you're pointing out there.
Is there a bus stop or something that a pedestrian would? I mean, where are the pedestrians coming from that come to that main entrance, Brian?
That's the thing. But realistically, most people are going to be pulling into the parking deck and coming in from behind, on the backside.
Yeah, okay, I'm a visitor and I'm coming to visit somebody there. Where am I? Let's say I'm taking public transportation or walking.
Okay.
How do I?
So there'd be a public a bus stop right here.
Okay, all right.
So
Then yeah, I don't know how to get in the building.
Here. Yeah.
So like even like an awning or like an arch or a canopy or something that tells me this is where you go.
Well, and it might be an opportunity, a small way to also break up the buildings. If you might pull something forward, maybe have something there that would add a tiny bit of relief.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. I think that, to be honest, I think that's an area that we just we kind of bypassed. But yeah, there definitely should be some sort of identification there, whether it's a canopy or some change in material that really identifies that as the entrance and makes it more of a welcoming entrance to the building.
I'm a huge fan of arches, but I don't know that that's the appropriate shape here.
He's got the pop out, like he did on the other side. He had that squared opening for the bump outs for the pop up retail. So I mean, it wouldn't have to be orange or anything like that, but he could pick up an element like that. He's got a lot of really good design elements on this that he can pull from and use, but something that they can get to. And I'm okay with the residential on the ground level. I just would almost like to see it the ground level if it could kind of be. I like the brownstone idea where you step up a couple steps or something to get to it, separate it from that plaza just a step or two, so that even the ones on Lexington are sometimes slightly above or below. And I don't have an issue with the residential and ground level if it's got some kind of slight separation from the street, but it's still got that. I think they can be a residential on the ground level can be very active space. That's done in all kinds of mixed use areas. But I want a little bit more separation than just a wall around their patio space. Does that make any sense?
That does. Yeah.
And then, sorry, now I'm on my soapbox now, but so the commercial entrance further south, that's where those big columns are, is that right? Where that person's standing?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So it's a recessed entrance?
It is. From the sidewalk, yes. Except if you come back. Let's see. Here. Yeah, as you know, there's a lot of grade changes to play with here, but yeah, there is an accessible entrance.
So just maybe signage or something. I mean, maybe this is obvious and you haven't gotten to that point.
Yeah. I mean, there's this is still open as to is this one office space, like one big office space, or is it retail or restaurant? I mean, those are kind of the unknowns right now. So I think that would dictate what any kind of signage should be there.
And then did the interior courtyard stay the same?
It did. Yeah, the interior courtyard is exactly the same.
What's the schedule, Brian, on this? When are you trying to submit?
We're shooting for this Friday.
Okay.
Yeah, Brian, this these changes have us going back for downtown commission, planning and zoning, city council. And if we could have a grading permit tomorrow, we wouldn't be soon enough. So we're trying to push this as much as possible because we're anxious for the project to get moved and get out of the ground. I mean, we had really gotten a good ways on the original design and just kept running into roadblocks with cost based upon some of the soil conditions and how deep we were going into the hill with the parking deck and some of that kind of stuff. So,
Did this? It's not really our purview. I'm just curious if it changed any of your stormwater stuff. You didn't really reduce impervious or anything with this, correct?
Correct. It's basically still the same overall footprint.
Okay.
It's just, it was more of the volume aspect of where we took the really deep section of parking deck and pulled that away from the really elevation change at Ashland to the extent possible.
Okay.
So I know we're getting close to noon here. Any other final comments for the team? If not, we'll be looking forward to the submittal on Friday. And Brian, those were some, I think, some really good comments that you got. Hopefully you'll be able to incorporate some of those in to what we see. And I believe, Sasha, is that it?
Well, are you talking about, there's no downtown commission meeting on Friday? You're not talking about that, are you?
No, just the application.
Middle
Okay.
deadline, yeah.
It would be at your July 10th downtown commission meeting.
Okay.
Brian is now a part of, yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah. Well, thank you all so much for your comments and your feedback. We will revisit this design and take in what you've all have said and see what we can incorporate.
That's some really good hard work, Brian.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks,
All right.
everybody.
Thank you.